The stagecoach rocked and bumped. Harbor's body ached, but she didn't allow her fellow passengers to see her cringe. She learned little about any of them during the ride, except they were all either living in Tasako already or soon to be. She didn't want anyone to think her weak and unfit for the teaching position. One young woman leaned closer and stared at Harbor's face.
"You gonna be sick? You look a bit green."
Harbor shook her head. "Not at all. It's just a bit close in the coach." She sat up straight, trying to ignore the woman, who was actually more a girl than a woman. From the dress she wore, exotic perfume permeating the coach, and the outlandish makeup the woman had applied to her face, Harbor knew the girl was not anyone she would need to impress. If ever there were a dance hall girl, this was one. They had all introduced themselves at the beginning of the trip. The girl's name was Lottie.
"You ain't from around these parts. You look so familiar."
Harbor straightened her skirt and turned her face away from the girl's scrutiny. She blinked her eyes several times to hold back the tears of pain, frustration, and apprehension. It was bad enough to be jostled around in the stagecoach, but to be forced to converse with a girl of ill repute was more than she expected. She already introduced herself to the girl earlier on. Another passenger turned and glared at her. He was asleep most of the trip, so they were never introduced. He was a nice-looking man, with large gray eyes and wavy brown hair under his hat. "You do look familiar. Why won't you answer a simple question? Do you have family in Tasako?" Harbor gasped slightly. In her hometown, no man would have dared to speak to her without being introduced first. And even then, he never would have asked such a question, nor demanded she answer a girl like Lottie. She lifted her head and locked eyes with him. She was about to speak her mind when she was interrupted.
"This here is the new school teacher,"
Lottie explained.
"You was asleep when we all swapped names. Hers is Miss Anders."
The man lifted the Stetson hat from his head. "Miss Anders, a pleasure to meet you. My name is Mr. Burroughs." His words were laced in sarcasm, which surprised Harbor. She couldn't begin to understand why he would be so rude. Suddenly Lottie let out a loud laugh.
"What, Drake? What's gotten into you? No one in town uses their second name. Why you want to go and do it now? My second name is Cliver, but don't no one else even know that."
The man named Drake smiled and sat back, placing his hat on his lap. "I believe Miss Anders comes from a place where it's proper to use only second names. It's something I'd almost forgotten." Harbor eyed the man, questions filling her soul. Who was he? Where had he come from? And what did he know about where I'm from? He wore the typical clothes of a cowboy, but there was something that made Harbor think he was an educated man. When she looked up at him, she thought she noted a smirk on his face, but he turned away before she could be sure.